Hello, everyone. This is Blanca Fernández, and the piece of work that I'm presenting today is part of a bigger research project that is named Female Childhood Across Borders, a cultural linguistics approach to the English-based conceptualization of perception of female childhood. And so my particular work deals with an exploratory corpus-based analysis of female childhood in biographical discourse between 1750s and the 1900s, particularly in the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography. Here's an outline of what this presentation will look like, but let's delve directly into it. The aim of this paper is to explore the representation of female childhood and its impact in biographical discourse in the mentioned period. With this goal, we want to analyze the main collocations of the keywords that represent the aboutness of childhood, and through them, identify the attitudes and associations of girlhood in discourse. To give you a very brief theoretical background on this topic, we should consider the complexity of the concept of childhood, particularly when dealing with female childhood. Childhood has been referred to as the forgotten category, the silent years, and children have many times been described as miniature adults or adults in pocket size. So not as a period on its own, with particular characteristics and needs. But when does childhood end, or when does it even start? It is also quite complex to try and divide childhood into periods and determine time limits, considering the specific features of each of them. Because of this, many segmentation have been proposed through time. For instance, in the late Middle Ages, we find these Latin terms that divide childhood in three: infantia, pueritia, and adolescentia, but many others could be found and considered. In this work, childhood is considered a multifaceted cultural and social construct, and thus a dynamic concept that changes over time and place. Starting with the corpus used for this analysis, it consists of a total of almost 4,000 entries from the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography, divided in 50-year periods. All the entries belong to women who, as described in the dictionary's website, shape British history. The decision to analyze the tokens into three different time periods was made to observe any potential diachronic variation in detail. This corpus amounts to a total of almost 3 million tokens. This mixed method analysis was performed through a corpus-based approach using the software Sketch Engine. Out of all the terms selected to analyze the aboutness of childhood, today I will only be focusing on the main associations of these ones: childhood, child, girlhood, girl, and infant. The software allows us to obtain the frequency of the search token, perform a collocation analysis, and extract the selected terms, collocates, and surrounding words in order to analyze the main patterns of the terms' grammatical and collocational behavior, and then their associations in context. Let's start with the results already. Childhood is the main keyword of this search. Table 2 here illustrates the raw and relative frequency of the token in the different subcorpora, displaying an increase in its presence towards the end of the 19th century, when childhood may have taken a more significant role and more information was accessible of the character's girlhood. Regarding the adjectival collocates of childhood, there seems to be a general dichotomous view on childhood of the happy and unhappy childhood. This is particularly the case in the entries from earlier periods, where childhood collocates only with unhappy, difficult, unsettled, not tranquil, and unhappy. Remember that you can pause the video to see the examples, so I won't waste that much time in them. The range of adjectives increases in the 1801 to the 1850 entries, including other surrounding facts such as social status, impoverished, middle class, familiar situation, motherless, places where the individual grew up, such as country, London, peripatetic, or other emotional experiences besides the happy and unhappy dichotomy, such as painful or magical. But the lexicon grows even more varied in the 1851 to the 1900 subcorpus, where we find all the previous categories but expanded, such as the ones that can be seen in this table here. The happy and unhappy childhood dichotomy continues, particularly in relation to the families, houses, and places the women grew up in. This expansion could be explained by the fact that the corpus is bigger in token size, or that more information was collected on the individual's life, more details of it. Interestingly enough, the collocations in the entry from 1851 to 1900s also relate to a certain extent the women's childhood to their active roles in it. For instance, for their creations or imaginations, and its perception as being, for instance, repressed in it. Throughout the corpus, it is made evidence the importance of affect and or presence of the family members or loved ones while growing up, as well as the implications of its existence or lack in the adult's personality or life. Whether the child, had a good childhood or not, the entries relate these experiences to posterior repercussions, as you can see in these examples. Furthermore, childhood is also encountered in the corpus modifying other nouns. It generally describes the times when the individual was a child, this is childhood home, referring to the house where the women grew up in. Even though many of the uses of childhood as noun modifiers may also add an element of nostalgia and affection, this is not necessarily always the case, as many samples simply relate the object to their youth neutrally or refer to them as negative memories, even. Regarding the keyword child, it becomes increasingly significant throughout the three subperiods, the mention of the survival of the family and particularly young children. This period was one of few medical technologies, and early death was very frequent in children. This explains the large number and the importance in biographical discourse of the number of children and siblings, the order of the child, the gender of the children, and the amount of surviving or dead kids. Interestingly enough, child collocates mostly with adjectives that describe the character of the girl. Grows increasingly common throughout the three subperiods, which could be explained again by the expanding knowledge or evidence of information, or could also be due to a growth of interest to detail accounts of the character of the individual and her emotional journey. Nonetheless, it is the 1851 to 1900 subcorpus which stands out in the number of occurrences of adjectival constructions with child that refer to the character of the girl. The women in the entries seem to be described not only in their achievements, but also their complexity in characters. Of course, some references to physical descriptions are also encountered, as you can see here. Curiously enough, together with mentions to delicacy, there is a great importance given in the entrance to the health and physical well being of the child. As in this period, medical technology again was not developed enough to cure many diseases. Between these afflictions that affected young girls, we encounter asthma, bone injuries, epilepsy, or general illness that force the children to stay at home. Very common to find these references. Moving on, in this corpus, girl and girlhood seem to refer to posterior years than previous key terms such as child and childhood, but used as an age limit of undefined youth. It seems to be considered more adult, since it is more frequent to find it collocating with roles in work, society, activities, physical aspect, and in relation to other people. Girl is commonly associated with ideals of aspect and physical beauty, and hence it is no surprise to encounter in the entries numerous associations of youth with beauty, delicacy, and enslavedness. Girlhood is described in the Oxford English Dictionary as the state of being a girl, the time of life during which one is a girl, also girls collectively. But this again, as it happens with childhood, blurs time limits or psychological developments, and as well as the ideological and cultural elements that construct these terms. Girlhood is dealt with as a period of time or phase and marks the duration of or limit of the individual's life experiences, separated from younger years or infancy, for instance. As its definition advances, girlhood is also used for the collective of girls, or else the motto or ideal of the girl, what it should be to be a girl. Finally, the term infant generally describes the earliest years of childhood when the person is a baby until the first years of life, as the infancia in the beginning described in the Middle Ages. Throughout the corpus, infant seems to be more neutral, particularly as a mitigator when discussing the death of children. Could be argued to be less emotionally loaded than previous terms of childhood, or it seems like in this corpus. To conclude, in this exploratory analysis, it seems that descriptions of childhood grow deeper throughout the three subperiods, perhaps because more information is obtained from the women or because of a growth in interest in detailed accounts of their lives and childhoods. There seems to be a dichotomous view in general of the happy and happy childhood, particularly when discussing the implications in the adult's life. In general, childhood is a very small part of the description, usually condensing complex structures, but very limited, and not very relevant in general in the entry. Discussing some limitations, this kind of works becomes a challenge to automatize, since it is impossible to make the software realize what items refer to the individual's childhood and which don't, which might refer to others or childhood in general, so it needs to be manually checked. There is a necessity for further research to delve into more into the collocations, perhaps in other uses or expand the terms. And besides, I think it could also be interesting to perform the same kind of analysis with dictionaries from other places and compare cultural differences. But that, of course, for the future. That's going to be it for me. Thank you very much if you're still here. Here you have the references. Remember, you can pause the video, check them, check the examples. And if you have any question or anything that you may want to comment on, don't forget to leave it in the comment section, I guess. And I'll be very happy to answer afterwards. So thank you very much.